Yes, that's correct. Nearly 20 years ago, I was giving a lecture at the AA when I first started, first year at the AA Design Research Lab. And you talked about the consistency of thinking. There is a lot of consistency of thinking, but it isn't apparent, because when I gave that lecture 20 years ago, I started with saying I'm a revolutionary communist. Okay. And now I will tell you why that makes sense. And but there's still, with this notion, there's still a lot of intellectual continuity with that initial statement. And there's also a lot of transformation and change, and I'm in a different place also. So now I'm saying I'm kind of revolutionary capitalists, because I don't think we are in capitalism the way we should be. Although I subscribe to the neoliberalist epoch as moving us a step closer and out of a kind of quagmire and near catastrophe of the 70s, which we have escaped from. But I still subscribe to historical materialism. I integrate in my discourse concepts like post-Fordism that have that lineage. But I'm in a totally different place, and I've discovered a new set of references where I might, if I think politically, pin my political hope to, which is Austrian economics, libertarianism, anarcho-capitalism. Something which I got into 2008, that was a real shake-up moment, and redirected my thinking, because up to this time, my revolutionary fervor kind of slowed and it was more mainstream oriented and less politicized, quite happy with the political situation. And then I realized 2008 that things are going real amiss, and what we're trying to do, over half of our projects were cancelled. There was also personal. I nearly lost all my savings if it wasn't for the nationalization of Royal Bank of Scotland. Quite a little shock. These are little personal steerings, but ultimately it's of course an intellectual steering and redirection, and I find it, I want to try that out here. I know this is a kind of politically charged audience, the humanities and social science interests, philosophy, even when you bring in architecture and art in such discourses, there is that kind of sense of charge. So let me try where this goes. I also was inspired a little bit. I mean, this was put together quite quickly by Warren's discourse on cognitive capitalism and notions like the cognitariat and the new labor conditions. I mean, things which I've been very familiar with, these transformations through the post-Fordism discourse, and I just want to say that if there is such a thing as the cognitariat, just to begin with, it's certainly a much better place to be in than being a proletariat. So there's certainly a huge advancement in our condition of life and work, which is very, very important. To me, we have much more initiative and self-direction in our work, much more connections and stimulation. And that's all the best for our productivity. And productivity, just to throw this in at the beginning, remains the core category of my discourse. This, by the way, also underpins my architectural theory, which is based on Luhmann's work and social system theory. And in the epilogue, I ground that in a kind of deeper anthropologic materialist grounding in the concept of productivity, which needs a bit of an upgrading from where Marx had it, because I think it certainly wasn't explicit in Marx, but it does to fold into working conditions. So not only that we're producing per unit of time more prosperity and plenty and products and services, but that we do it also with a lighter and less burdensome, less back and bone breaking form of work, less stressful, more stimulating and lighter. So that's another form of productivity advance. If you can do the same amount of material plenty with the much more comfort and lighter touch. And the third category, which I think we need to be folded in, that we do it with a lighter ecological footprint, because here's one in terms of climate change and all these horrors which are awaiting us, an externality which we need to kind of explicitly monitor also, which isn't always folded into, let's say, economic calculation. So, just a few prefaces where I stand, and you can see already continuity with Marx's discourse. So, my thesis, though, is that modern civilization is the creation of capitalism, and its preservation and continuing progress depends on the preservation of capitalism. And that preservation of capitalism is not to be taken for granted. I mean, it's been receding, it's been broken, it's been perverted and distorted, and at the moment we're in a stage what I call crony capitalism, which is very, very heavy, compromised by interventionism on many levels. Competition is basically for lobbying. Trading is following the lips of the central bank committees. There are no real capital markets anymore. They've been kind of, through interest rate repression, kind of vanquished. There is no proper labor market. There is no proper competition. There's bailouts and subsidies and kind of basically a state management, nearly a fascist economy. And this is a category I would use from Austrian economics, where they were, in a sense that under fascism, in particular Italian and German Nazi, National Socialist fascism, you had the appearance of capitalism, where you had private property ownership of the means of production, and you had the magnates and the industrial leaders and so-called wage relations, but every single thing and move and economic action was centrally directed through a political agenda. So I'm not saying that we're at that stage, but for me, it's certainly not capitalism. It's crony capitalism moving into fascism, and that's why we have 6 years of stagnation and backpedaling and falling living standards in many countries, and this will continue unless we break through this problem. So 2008 politicized many people. A lot of them thought would attribute this to kind of deregulation and hypercharged up capitalism and market processes. And there's an opposite analysis which shows that this is in fact the prevention of the self-regulating mechanisms and emergent markets and entrepreneurship delivering solution, which first of all delivered all the distortions lead to 2008 crash, and it prevents from moving out of that crash and quagmire. So that's where I'm standing. And yeah, I still believe in that. I discovered through this Ludwig von Mises, Friedrich von Hayek, and Mary Rothbard, and the whole discourse, intellectually highly stimulating and with a lot of depth. Up to then, I didn't know that there was a kind of non-left intellectual milieu which just depth. And well, I knew one figure, which was Luhmann, who has a system of an all-encompassing, self-reflecting system of the social and modern society history, how semantic structures interface with this. So that's it's the first for me comprehensive social theory and theory of society which competes in terms of its totality ambition with Marx, and it also has a similar kind of passionate and intense followingship with reading circles and ever expanding circle of people eager to penetrate this, and that's what I pinned my architectural theory to. Okay, so but now there's a new. I discovered this new universe of, libertarian Austro economics, anarcho-capitalist discourse, which folds in and connects to things like the new institutional economics. It's very, very fascinating and deep, and a figure like Mises is a full system of human action. That's this treatise called A Full Sociology, with a kind of deeply reflected epistemology, and in this sense compatible to Marx, a kind of sociologically, institutionally founded political economy. So I see this addressed to some of you guys here. The ignorance, emptiness, and danger of anti-capitalism is what this lecture also addresses itself to. And the societal prospects of socialism and communism. It's not a real prospect, but I'd say a lot of people think in these terms, and maybe instead of watershed, it's kind of a deepening interventionism, crony capitalist, quasi-fascist economy, which converges onto socialism. So I don't believe that these distinctions are possible anymore. That in a sense, what happened in the Soviet Union, the state, which had different names, totalitarian state capitalism and also fascism, are variants of, of course, unintended but inevitable variants of a trajectory which ultimately is regressive of what was understood as some kind of a socialist communist project. So socialism, and again interventionism, etc., must replace the market allocation of goods and services in the context of individual valuations and choices, including occupational choices, with the totalitarian central plan that must impose rationing and forced labor. And that's what we've seen. It's the empirical experience, and I think this is an inevitable consequence. And so the insurmountable coordination and calculation problems on top of that, of these kind of attempts to centrally direct economic activities and social processes, imply an inevitable retrogression into poverty and decimation. And that we've seen that in China and in the Soviet Union, in Nazi Germany, which had the temporary appearance of being kind of prosperous, but this is very, very false appearances. So, I mean, this was the lineup I was kind of passionate about and learned a lot from, and monumental achievements, which I still appreciate, cherish, and also people sticking their necks out and delivering on their hypotheses, even if they turned out to be wrong. I'm a huge admirer of the top lineup, but I discovered the new lineup here, which is pretty impressive and incredibly also against all odds and difficulties. Somebody like Ludwig von Mises, who, by the way, who shared a seminar with people like Rudolf Hilferdinger, Nikolai Bukharin, the leaders of Austrian Marxism, together with the people like Oskar Morgenstern and Hayek, etc. And then had to reinvent his life multiple times through being an enemy of the state under Nazism, and then moving to Switzerland and ended up in NYU, by the way, where he refounded the whole movement.
The guy on the left is Mises.
This is Mises, Ludwig von Mises.
He ended up in New York.
Yeah, he was NYU, and he arrived in the 60s and established a whole movement and intellectual cluster and ferment across America, which is kind of alive and thriving, which produced Murray Rothbard and anarcho-capitalism, the founding of the Libertarian Party, and many more aspects of it. So it's a very, very important impact on U.S. politics and by the way, an incredible, like all of these characters, an incredible scholar of unbelievable depth of historical and empirical knowledge and knowledge of economic and political literature. And the same would go for Friedrich von Hayek, who was his student and became a professor at LSE in the 20s, won over all of LSE to the Austrian outlook, and started to anticipate the world economic crisis of 29. But then in the battle between Keynes and Hayek, Keynes won out, but then when this whole Keynesian house of cards came crushing down, with the Bretton Woods kind of exploding as predicted, and stagflation ravaging through the Western world, with London on double-digit inflation, stagflation strikes, and a breakdown. He was dug out and awarded the Nobel Prize of Economics in '74, and then he became a kind of the inspiration for Thatcher. The Thatcher and Reagan revolution, I would have thought, I've never said that, but saved the civilization. It was an absolute necessity. If you were in London in the 70s, and that degeneration and collapse of a leading society and nation and powerhouse, where London has been shrinking and been in kind of absolute degradation, when she stepped in, and look at now what London is, the absolute beacon and the best place to live in the world, and it started growing, it became the financial powerhouse, the media economics powerhouse, the legal system, it's a jurisprudence of the world. I mean, there's many things, the best architectural firms, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it's not only London, I think the Western civilization came back with a lot of contradictions, and the contradictions which we don't like, by the way, like these kind of wealth differentials which occur, the kind of hardships and I think a lot to do with that. This revolution, it was was not in its full consequence pushed through. That you had a kind of mixed system of government intervention on many levels, which in a sense didn't allow the full rationality and power, productivity enhancing beauty of, where a lot of problems should be solved by free competitive entrepreneurship were not allowed to be solved by this, but left under the iron fist of states. Okay, comrades. That's the way I want to address some of you in terms of memory and linking back. Join me in the pursuit of a prosperous, rapidly progressing, thus increasingly free and fulfilling, classless society without exploitation and repression. That's what I'm into still, under the heading of an Austrian anarcho-capitalist flag. Okay, radical capitalism, revolutionary capitalism, anarcho-capitalism, delivers a classless society, and that's what I believe. According to the class concept, that defines the ruling class as a class that switches from relations of mutually voluntary exchange to forced expropriation based on the threat of violence. We must distinguish, and that's an important distinction here in this background, economic means of income based on services rendered from political means of income based on violent expropriation. And, the first type of income is the only legitimate, and life enhancing and productivity enhancing and charity enhancing concept. So, there's another figure I have to mention, because although Mises is the great synthesizer and radical innovator who's done monumentally innovative, I think, work in the field of a synthesized economic system, the founder of Austrian economics and teacher of, not directly but through an interim, was Karl Menger, who published his Principles of Economics in 1879, so in the midst of Marx's evolving volumes of Capital, Volume 1 to 3. And he wrote some very, very powerful breakthrough innovations, and then there's a third one directly from his first student, so which in a sense make Marx's economic system in many ways obsolete. And I absolutely adore Marx, and that's a monumental achievement. It's not, that's progress in the sciences, right? You do this system, and then but there's fault lines which are cracked open, and you have to throw the system away, and all the content, the individual observations inside, they can be re-emerged and be re-systematized in a new conception. So subjectivism. All economic valuations are subjective and start at the point of consumption rather than production. That's a huge thing. There's a radical subjectivism in value theory which was brought forward, which actually impacted the whole of contemporary economics, is kind of based on this, but in a half-hearted and watered-down way. And only the Austrian, as a heterodox economic paradigm, is full on radicalized subjectivism all the way through. The next thing is marginalism, which it seemed once it was hit upon, it just convinced everybody within seconds nearly in the discipline that that's the way you have to analyze economic processes. All valuations refer to particular quantitative choices that happen at the margin. You never value and compare in abstracto water versus diamonds, a big value paradox with the classics conserve, but always a certain quantity of one item versus another at a particular time, a time of choice. And if you already had 3 glasses of water, then the fourth one becomes, it's not so urgent, not so cheap, and you have plentiful water, then this doesn't mean much to you. It doesn't mean that in total water is much more precious and important for humanity than something like the diamond. But all valuations and prices are, of course, made at the moment of an individual choice with particular quantities and aspects, and it's what this additional item is worth for you in the context of other opportunities is what its value is. And as these are millions of individual choices there in some kind of network aggregation, constitute some kind of emergent concept of value, which is absolutely critical for social coordination. The cost concept was reconstituted, and that is absolutely everywhere in economics now. I've been just very familiar with MBAs and the teaching of economics, all the way down to pragmatic corporate finance, is that the cost concept of opportunity cost. All costs are opportunity costs. And that means that there ultimately is a radically subjective conception of cost. The cost of an action is defined as a foregone next best alternative that could have been satisfied by the time, effort, resources used in the chosen action. So it's not these resources themselves which are the cost, but what they could have delivered, always valuing from the point of consumption back to its factors of production. But you can also apply this to the factors of production, applied to selecting means rather than ends. We reason as follows. By choosing to use one set of means rather than another, we choose to preserve this other set of possible means because it has also the capacity to satisfy more urgently felt or higher valued additional next need in comparison to the set we choose to use for the current chosen end. That's what we mean by economizing. Sorry, a little bit quick, but I can also circulate this later. So there's a kind of radical reconstitution of the concept of cost. I mean, let's say it this way. It's what a lot of Marxists, and I've been a Marxist economist so many times, you just don't look at this. You have a kind of this bourgeois economics, you don't look at it. But what convinces virtually everybody in the field in terms of subjectivism, marginalism, and opportunity cost, and there are many more categories, and the Marxists pretend they've never heard of this or could dismiss it, is just not convincing. And we got to overcome this. So there's also another thing which I find interesting, which was pointed out and raised to the level of reflective, approximately reflective consciousness, that there are transhistorical, invariant economic laws based on the human condition in general and in a world of scarcity. I mean, I'm mentioning this because when I read some of that cognitive capitalism spin, I mean, I have appreciation for a lot of the things, but when I read some of the stuff from Berardi and others, there's no recognition that there is. It's only the question of how good it is and good it feels to be free or be non-alienated and in charge of everything. That at the end of this, something has to come out in a world of scarcity. That all this. This prosperity and health and safety and friendliness and world-spanning agile co-participation has to be produced through disciplined decision on a daily basis, where managers make choices, process information, make sure and double-check. That's absolutely not on the horizon. And I'm highly conscious of this because I'm, let's say, if I redescribe myself now, I'm a pro-capitalist entrepreneur with an intellectual curiosity and a political passion, let's say. So, again, there are these transhistorical economic laws, the law of diminishing marginal utility. That means valuation of additional goods, services slopes down a gradient of urgency and utilization in types of situations. So, first piece of water you drink if you're thirsty. The second piece, you're a little bit thirsty still. The third one you use to brush your teeth. The third one to water the flowers. So there is this kind of gradient that it's meaningless to say what water is worth, as it anyway. It's subject to a law of diminishing marginal utility, and that goes for all economic system under all circumstances. The law of increasing, it was traditionally called diminishing returns, increasing and diminishing returns. That means below and beyond an optimal quantitative combination of complementary factors. There is a kind of, you can increase productivity to factor combinatorics optimization. That's, by the way, the real microeconomic explanation of what we call economies of scale. They're based on the law of increasing/diminishing returns. Very important one, the law of association, which is known in tradition in classical economics as Ricardo's law of comparative advantage, which means that you have that trading between nations is always advantageous under all circumstances, even if one nation is has a higher productivity and skill and expertise in all branches of production, and as a second country which is inferior in all sectors of production, they still mutually benefit if they establish a division of labor between themselves, because the one country can, in its relative, comparative, most distance from the other, invest more there and leave that element to the other, and the total sums up. It's a bit why even if you as a top manager are most probably a better secretary, you employ a secretary to pick up that from you, so you can concentrate on what you are truly best, although you might be in all respects better than your secretary. It's just as a no offense, a kind of example for explication. I wanted to say these are law has been generalized to all economic relations, and Mises calls the law of societization, das Vergesellschaftungsgesetz, basically where the crux why actually social cooperation and the division of labor is always a good idea. Always more trade, more division of labor, more cooperation. So sounds stupid, and even provocatively say these are universal eternal economic laws that constrain all societies independent from place and time, because from the Marxist perspective we have to historicize everything, and it's always historically specific, and all the laws of capitalism, of course, are particular to capitalism, but we have to compare, when you're comparing capitalism with other systems, as economies and economic systems, the category itself must be given substance, and that's why I need a kind of universal category of the economic, and that's very important. And when I introduce Austrian economics, I don't like the phrase of economics. I want to deliver it and read it as a critique of political economy, because for me it substitutes the work of Marx. That's why I'm a revolutionary capitalist. That's why I'm a critical proponent. That's a version of the critique of political economy. So my interpretation and use of the coherent cluster of theories of Mises, Hayek, Rothbard, Hoppe, and others, many others, is this of a critique of political economy. And of course, theories are actually and potentially multifunctional. You could also use it to predict better the business cycle. They have a fantastic, I think, compelling, convincing business cycle theory. But you can also, I think it's very important for me to become that critique of political economy. So my aim, or Austrian aim, is a systemic critique, a critique of institutions, qualitative and based on pattern predictions, rather than, let's say, the neoclassical mainstream agenda of quantitative forecasting via mathematical empirical models to give policy advice, guidance for interventionist policies. That's what neoclassical economics is delivering. And learning a lot. I mean, a lot of the Austrian insight are not neoclassical mainstream economics, but in a kind of watered down way, because they don't employ it for political economy. They don't have that deep, systemic, critical political thrust, if you like, which definitely you find in Mises. And you can see that because Rothbard is most outspokenly a political theorist more than anything, because he literally wants to rip apart the contemporary world political system. Peter Schiff, just to show that these theories are multifunctional, is a political agitator and fund managing entrepreneur who's used Austrian economics also to navigate the system better. His fund is incredibly successful. He's predicted, in the sense, the 2008 crash. You can look at YouTube lectures where he's dissecting what's going on in 2006 and 2007 and before. Just as an aside. How much time is there usually for these lectures? An hour, roughly? Okay, I have material to go to. So now we're in the game of comparing economic systems. The most basic is capitalism versus socialism, or let's say, since socialism doesn't exist anymore, capitalism versus what we're in now, interventionism. But a lot of the critics of the neoliberal I don't know where they want to go. Do they want to go to the 70s? They want more of what have been kind of broken through. They want back more state intervention, more rules. Nanny state is increasing anywhere, but they want much more of it. They want everybody to be kind of guided and handcuffed and put on rails with respect to which exchanges they can make, which contracts they can engage with, where to trade, what to trade. They want quotas and rates and price controls and rent controls. It's like, it seems, in every individual instance, that's what they're arguing for. But there's no, but we've gone through all this. We know where that leads, right? So we got to cut this through, and I'm passionate about, and I think that the inequalities which we're actually witnessing, which a lot of people get upset about, are absolutely part of that the financial system is totally corrupted, is a totally creation of crony capitalism where everybody is bailed out, guaranteed 100 of times, given printed money to speculate. I mean, it's just insane and obsessive, but everybody's participating. Everybody got their accounts, saving and count accounts insured. Up to 50,000 in America, you can open 50 of those, so you can unlimited amounts of money insured, guaranteed. So the banks only compete with lower interest. There's no prudence, no self-regulating mechanisms on what these banks are up to. So you take millions of viscerally invested, worrying potentially, and watchful eyes off what the banks are doing, and then you hope that with a bunch of bureaucrats who have no real interest and couldn't care less about what really is happening, supposedly controlling what's going on. That's what they call increasing regulation. They should you have to let the market self-regulate. And it does in many ways. All the rating agencies, their processes have been corrupted because the government imposes AAA on the market per two. So if that's not corrupting, so these self-regulating mechanisms are all bastardized, corrupted. The whole mortgage lending system was through state intervention, through political pressure of lending back to areas where the money is coming. All sorts of absurd, fallacious, myopic. Impositions which led inevitably in this crash. Yeah.
You suggest they should have let the banks fail.
Oh, absolutely. But first, as one of the guys I like,
there's a phone, there's a fizz.
no, very good, of course. But they will have never been allowed to get to become these absurd monsters they've become. They've only through state intervention and state guarantees been able to mutate into these absurdities, which a free market would never allow. The same as money. Money is a state creation. There's what we have to say is abolish the state monopoly of money creation, because it's a scam. It's absurd, and you have 250 different ones. The forex market is the biggest market in the world, which nobody needs, because you could have a global world currency under private management, like it used to be, or like Bitcoin promises to be. So the distortions are every single thing which goes wrong. It leads back to the state.
Bitcoins.
Yeah.
You got to take on the Bitcoin.
Absolutely, Bitcoin is a wonderful creation because it undercuts the state monopoly of money creation. And by the way, it was inspired by Mises and the Austrian school. This guy is and all the enthusiasts are basically Austrian sympathizers and economists. That Austrian economics allowed them to create this currency and make it. And so there's also kind of instrumental knowledge. It's an absolute creation of that paradigm I'm invested in now, what I discovered. So what I mean, there are many more. I mean, the whole idea of mortgage securitization was brought forward by Freddie Mae and Fannie Mae, the state government buying up and starting the cycle. So everything which been pinpointed is a function of state interference and mismanagement and distortion and basically putting the brakes on free market solutions and self-regulations. So, but let's go back a bit more on the theoretical track. The problem of political economy, the problem of any extended economic system with an extended division of labor, so anything beyond subsistence economy, has to make solvable. which is the coordination of everybody's economic activity so that the multitude of individual contributions add up. That's what capitalism delivers, I believe, through the market and price systems, and what would have to be replaced by a central plan under economy. So if you look at currently conceivable economic system compatible with a large complex society based on the vision of labor, you would have capitalism, which existed between 1850 and 1914, let's say, or 1905 or something, and interventionism, which have existed ever since and has mutated into Italian fascism, National Socialism, and Soviet communism, tragically. And socialism still, because we call it Syndicalism, which a lot of people believe in, but Mises demonstrates that it's actually not a real coherent, and it's actually an illogical choice. Well, forget these two. So each of them have their particular mechanism of coordination. So capitalism is a competitive market process. Interventionism is a regulated, in nice terms, a regulated market process. It could be regulated to the point that it becomes nearly central planning by another name. Mises calls the fascist Nazi economy a kind of socialism of the German brand. Syndicalism is meant to be kind of the catalyzation of different industries into blocks, which then negotiate, but that is not possible. It's illogical. It will collapse and is also unable to innovate, etc. But there's something if you're interested, read Mises' chapter in Human Action on syndicalism. Forget these. Yeah. Feudalism, rigid reproduction. I mean, if you don't have changing conditions, then you don't need much of this kind of coordination. Just coordinated by freezing everything. The first son of the baker became the baker, and all these proportions. It works as long as there's very, very slow, no population growth, not much innovation, which upsettles this. So you can have very, very stable reproduction. Syndicalism, if you want, maybe I skipped through this, but Mises calls it the genuine product of the proletarian mind. Basically, you want to give ownership to the plants. I say this here because a lot of this autonomism and operaism and workerism is kind of, I'm not sure explicitly, thinks this way and wants something like this. So the railroads to the railroadmen, the mines to the miners, etc. So syndicalism, that's Mises from Human Action. As a system of social organization is a genuine product of the proletarian mind. It is precisely what the naive employee considers a fair and expedient means for improving his own material well-being, eliminate the idle parasites, meaning all the entrepreneurs and managers and decision makers, and give that to the workers, and the workers self-management the plant. So it's also called the industrial democracy, as we could do something similar. What the liberal movement has substituted representative government for the despotism and hereditary kings and aristocrats, must crown its achievement by substituting industrial democracy for the tyranny and hereditary capitalists and entrepreneurs. Sounds plausible up to this point, and then the fundamental error, as Mises points out, is obvious. He says the entrepreneurs and capitalists are not irresponsible autocrats. They are unconditionally subject to sovereignty of the consumers. The market is a consumer democracy, the inverted commas. It's actually much better because you don't have to all agree that we should do this, and there's only very few things you can ever agree on. You can just move on and do it, and then you vote with your feet and with your purchases, and it's much more immediate and efficient. Syndicalists want to transform it into producers' democracy, and that's fallacious. For the sole end and purpose of production is consumption, and we come to this reversal of production and consumption. The means-ends relationship is inverted, and this can never go. I mean, I don't want to. You can play this through what would happen, and actually, the Italian fascists were corporatists, syndicalists, inverted commas. It was also on the program in some kind of American progressivist. It's just collapses as soon as the first negotiation is meant to start. In the end, you have to have somebody centrally allocating, and they have to shut up and get back to work. Otherwise, they block each other in strikes and blackmail mutually. It's just, And also, if you want to innovate, how do you reduce workforce, or how do you change working conditions? It's just not viable. It is an absolute illogical, so it's not considered. But okay, that was the historical sequence, by the way, up to a point, and I think this is kind of diminished, but we're back to here. Okay, so capitalism and socialism, that's the real debate. And that's what Mises has focused his political economy on. He's published the kind of first monumental treatise was called Socialism, a sociological and economic inquiry, and where he made some incredible breakthroughs. So capitalism is a competitive market process, and socialism is a central democratic planning. Now, Marx started, of course, that's the key distinction. That's where he wants to move. He wants from capitalism to socialism. And the way he looked at it and presents it and puts it to us, it seems compelling. And I was caught by this. I love that, right? So he's saying the anarchic process of the competitive market process, where the results of all simultaneous economic interactions confront each as alien force outside of society's conscious control. That's the market process. I accept that. But we can put a different spin on this also. And so that seems like horrible situation. It's basically the kind of local rules, emergent collective outcomes. They feed back and confront us. Nobody's intended that. Nobody's intending any of the outcomes. And later on you realize that is maybe a fantastic marvel of the system, but here it becomes a kind of threatening. It's so-called commodity fetishism theory. So it's compelling, and then if he says this, that central democratic planning delivers collectively deliberated and chosen plan and outcome, well, I put this in question because it is another question whether these things then pan out or are not kind of swamped by unintended consequences on the side. But in terms of theory, collectively deliberated and chosen plan and outcome, through that, humanity finally can consciously control its social life process and development, and actually can consciously make history. You can project mankind forward as a project of self-invention, like later Sartre would have your personal project. Which has never happened, of course. All social evolution is an evolutionary process. Nobody's ever intended, or very, very marginal things, and then there be unintended consequences. Institutions are refunctionalized. I mean, this is exactly the same like biological evolution. It's an undesigned. Now Marx says, we can design humanity's destiny. I mean, it's absolutely compelling if that's true. That's why I was kind of all into this. I mean, how can you resist that? So mankind for the first time acquires effective self-consciousness as social collective. The Hegelian idea of history, through the Hegelian philosophy, becoming self-consciousness, but that becomes a material project, a real potential. I mean, that was Marx, let's say, charm, is mesmerizing, Faustian pact, as if you like. So that's Marx, and I just switch how Hayek sees this. And he sees the competitive market process not as this kind of commodity fascist alien force. He sees a marvelous information processing using dispersed knowledges via a price system that coordinates the ends of myriad individual plans. Freely chosen a set of constraints. Yes, these constraints come through all the other plans which this has to dovetail in with, but within these constraints I'm free. And these choices, and it's been going very, very well. And since this happened, that's when humanity's trajectory kind of skyrocketed from the 17th century. Myriad individual plans with divergent intention in terms of an optimized allocation of scarce means. So it's a marvel and money and the price system and exchange relations and the institutions of markets, they evolve with nobody's intentions, but they're just unleashed. They let the genie out of the bottle. In terms of after 1,000 years of bone-breaking drudgery, despotism, poor health and brutish lives, which lasted very, very, very short and incredibly vulnerable, we have reached within a space of 200 years a position where, you know, in the 1950s, literally every single German person of a 60 million nation had a far higher standard of living, liberties, prosperity, and horizon and enlightenment than the king of Louis XIV. Telephone, TV, holidays, healthcare, hot water, baths. I mean, you name it, and well taken care of. You know, knowledge about being safe into the future. Is, you know, every single person of a whole nation. That was delivered to it by the marvel of capitalism. I mean, the whole development of science, of industrialization, all unleashed by these alignment of these institutions, which appeared only, you know, in Newton, you know, through the Dutch Republic into England, and so what he's thinking about central democratic planning, socialism, which Marx has such a kind of mesmerizing Faustian project for us. He says this poses the impossible task of centralizing dispersed knowledges and weighting divergent individual ends without any means of economic calculation. That's what Mises has covered. To compare alternative means of production. And that leads to what I described. It means that the marvel of the price system has to be replaced by political rationality, with all the corruption and networking and nepotism and which we've escaped from, which was still pressing on everybody's life in the early 19th century, and then leading into forced rationing, forced labor ultimately. Because the central plan, in the end, you need to coordinate. You don't have this information processing, telecommunication system of the markets and prices. You have to have crude force, and that ends up in forced labor. And there is no example. National Socialism is a variant in fascism of socialism. The Soviet Union ended there. Mao's China ended there. Every single project ended there, and actually Mises foresaw that. And that's the tragedy of the 20th century. What he also foresaw that, but there's in Marx something else in Marx. So Marx made a monumental, but incredibly, let's say, forgivable, not in its consequences, but in its kind of aspirational depth and passion, mistake. But he also, and that's where I go to Marx for, is the celebration of capitalist achievements. If you read the Communist Manifesto, that takeoff of humanity and that genie of the bottle sense, you totally get that. This constant evolution of production, all that is cells molds into air, all that is solid melts into all that is solid, was kind of, terrible clamped down situations. The need of constantly extending the market for its products chases the bourgeoisie over the whole surface of the globe. The bourgeoisie has given a cosmopolitan character to production and consumption. We find new wants, the inspirational new desires and life potential requiring for the satisfaction of the products of distant lands and climes. In place of old local and national seclusion and self-sufficiency, we have intercourse in every direction. The intellectual creations of individual nations become common property. National one-sidedness and narrow-mindedness become more and more impossible, etc., etc., etc. It's just, he knows, and he's the greatest fan, and he's kind of the first accelerationist, if you like, on that level. And conservation of old modes of production was, in alter form, was the first condition of existence of all early industrial classes. So it continues the bourgeoisie, by the rapid improvement of all instruments of production, by the immensely facilitative means of communication, draws all, even the most barbarian nations, into civilization. The cheap prices of its commodities are the heavy artillery with which it batters down old Chinese walls, with which it forces the barbarians' intensely obstinate hatred of foreigners to capitulate, etc., etc., etc. I mean, these are all wonderful achievements. There's a kind of creative destruction going on, which, by the way, one of the Austrian economists is the great Schumpeter as a kind of marginal figure there, talking about entrepreneurial thrusts, etc., etc., etc. I hear that the bourgeoisie has subjected the country to the rule of the towns. It has created enormous cities, has greatly increased the urban population as compared with the rural, and has thus rescued a considerable part of the population from the idiocy of rural life. And that idiocy of rural life is coming back if we destroy capitalism. And you saw it in Mao, you see it in the Khmer Rouge. That's what it is. It's just pure retrogression, which is genocidal. And I want to, you know, I want the comrades to own up to this. All the way to the foundations of their systems. Love that. It would be nice to have Alain Baudieu here to kind of see what he has to say. So there's, of course, also Marx's condemnation of capitalism's drawback. Nothing is for free. There's no free lunch, to some extent. So, yes, the bourgeoisie has left remaining no other nexus between man and man than naked self-interest, callous cash payment. It broke a lot of these solidarity bonds. But how great were they? If you were in a village, or even read the 19th century novel, how you were tied into your rich uncle or family. You can't escape. It's just these so-called solidarity and family and personal loyalty connections. They're the most oppressive. Why are people running away from? If as soon as they have the money, they want to be free. Agents, you know, Sartrean kind of self-inventing. They don't want the solidarity, loyalty. Let's say, coffin. So you know, callous cash, you can call it that, but it's incredibly liberating to you can just go and buy something, you know, to beg your patriarch to give you something. So it has resolved personal worth into excellence. There's a lot of this. The only freedom which they're really pushing is free trade. No, it's not true. It's not only free trade. It's personal freedoms. It's many other freedoms which capitalism has delivered. Yes, in the word for exploitation, veiled by religious and political illusions, naked, shameless, direct, brutal exploitation, it's certainly better than this veiled one, if you call it exploitation, but it's relative to what? Relative to this kind of dream of a future society where this could be overcome. Not relative to bad. Exploitation, yeah, if there's anything was getting better because at least it was in your face, potentially. Right? But it's certainly better than anything what went before and after. I mean, that's what the words take. So, but the thing is that you know, converted the physician, the lawyer, the priest, the poet, the man of science. And yes, great. I mean, I like that. And you know, these kind of honoraries of the small town, the kind of priest and lawyer, the notary. I mean, it's like, who wants this kind of nonsense, right? I mean, you know, for instance, in certain UK hospitals, you're not allowed to use a doctor title anymore. You know, because we don't want this kind of nonsense, reduce the family relation to a mere money relation. Well, it's not quite true. I mean, we have found this new freedoms of, for instance, constructing forms of intense intimacy. Luhmann's writing, sociological writings on love, the way romantic and intimate and true co-creation of a Sartrean project of life is possible only because you can construct that in an open field of possibility in an anonymous mass society where you can charge a trajectory through freedoms which the capitalist system delivers. So we not reduce, enhance family relations. Family relations were, you know, as you know, arranged marriages with daily matrimonial rape. That was family relations. I mean, Engels knew that, by the way. Engels was, you know, I don't know why Marx was married, and so he couldn't kind of push the free market, the free love ticket, right? So I mean, it's great, but there's nothing left. Because it also, you can't talk in absolutes. You can only talk comparative. So what are we comparing this to? You know, to the Soviet Union 1950? Shall we talk a bit, discuss a bit? There's more, but let's discuss.